You know, there's something special about waking up to the same sunrise your grandfather saw 70 years ago. That ranch wasn't just land to me, it was my heritage. And the HOA? Well, they thought they could just take it from me. Boy, were they wrong. If you've ever dealt with an HOA that's overstepped its bounds, make sure to subscribe to my channel and hit that like button. Drop your own HOA horror stories in the comments. I read every single one of them. My name's George Henderson, and I've lived on Sunset Ridge Ranch my entire 68 years. My grandpa bought this land back in '52 with money he saved working in the oil fields. Built the main house with his own 2 hands. My dad added the barn and the corral in the '70s. And me? Well, I just kept the whole thing running. The trouble started about 5 years ago when that new development went in on the east side. Suddenly we weren't out in the country anymore. We were part of some planned community with fancy gates and a homeowners association. First letter I got was about my fence. Not up to community standards, they said. The same fence that'd been keeping my cattle in for 30 years. I called their office. "This is George Henderson over at Sunset Ridge Ranch. Got your letter about my fence." A woman with a voice like a cheese grater answered, "Yes, Mr. Henderson. Your fence fails to meet Section 4.2 of our community guidelines regarding aesthetic uniformity." "Lady," I said, "it's a fence. It keeps cows from wandering onto the highway. What more do you want?" "The regulation is quite clear," she sniffed. "You have 30 days to comply or face fines." I hung up and figured that was the end of it. It wasn't. 30 days later, I got a bill for $500, then another the next month. Then they started complaining about my barn. Too rustic, they called it. Then my tractor, parked in visible violation of parking protocols. Then my windmill, an eyesore that doesn't conform to community architectural standards. The fines piled up. Thousands of dollars worth. I ignored them. What were they going to do? Put a lien on a ranch that's been in my family since before their precious community existed. Turns out that's exactly what they did. One Tuesday morning, I was having my coffee on the porch when a black sedan pulled up. A man in a suit that cost more than my best horse got out, followed by that woman with the greater voice. Turns out her name was Brenda Peterson. "HOA President." "Mr. Henderson," the suit said, handing me an envelope. "This is a notice of default and intent to foreclose." I looked at him like he'd grown a second head. "You're joking." Brenda stepped forward, all smug satisfaction. "I'm afraid not, Mr. Henderson. You've accumulated over $15,000 in fines and refused to pay, according to the covenants you agreed to when the community was established. We have the right to place a lien on your property and initiate foreclosure proceedings." "I never agreed to any covenants," I said, my voice getting tight. "I've been here since before this development existed." "Nevertheless," the suit said, "the property was incorporated into the HOA when the development was approved by the county. You're bound by the same rules as everyone else." They left me standing there with that envelope. Inside was a stack of legal documents an inch thick, all saying the same thing: pay up or lose your ranch. I called my daughter Sarah that night. She's a lawyer down in Austin, specializes in property law. "Dad, this is outrageous," she said, after I explained everything. "They can't just do this." "Apparently they can," I told her. "And they are. I'm coming up this weekend," she said. "Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. And for God's sake, don't pay them a dime." Sarah arrived Friday night with a briefcase full of files and a determined look in her eye. We sat at my kitchen table until 2 a.m. going through documents. "They're counting on you not fighting this, Dad," she said, highlighting sections of the HOA bylaws. "Most people either can't afford a lawyer or don't want the hassle." "Well, they picked the wrong rancher to mess with," I said, pouring us both another cup of coffee. The next few weeks were a blur of legal filings and phone calls. Sarah sent the HOA a formal dispute of their claims, citing numerous procedural violations. They responded with more threats. Then came the false hope. Brenda Peterson called me personally one afternoon. "Mr. Henderson," she said, her voice suddenly sweet as honey, "I think we may have come on a bit too strong. How about we sit down and discuss a reasonable settlement?" I met her at a local coffee shop the next day. She was all smiles and apologies. "Look, George," she said, leaning forward conspiratorially, "maybe we got off on the wrong foot. How about we wipe out all those fines, and you just make a few small changes to bring your property into compliance?" "Like what?" I asked, suspicious. "Oh, just minor things. Paint your fence. Move that tractor behind the barn. Maybe take down that old windmill. It's really the biggest complaint. My grandfather built that windmill with his own hands," I said. "I understand it has sentimental value," she said, patting my hand like I was a child. "But progress waits for no one, George. We're trying to create a cohesive community here." I told her I'd think about it and left. Sarah hit the roof when I told her. "It's a trap, Dad," she said, pacing my living room. "They're trying to get you to voluntarily comply, which would Ren their authority over your property. Don't fall for it." 2 days later, I got another letter. This one wasn't sweet. It was a formal notice that the foreclosure was moving forward. They'd given me an inch of hope, then yanked back a mile. You wouldn't believe what they did next. They started sending people, potential buyers, I assume, to drive slowly past my property. Sometimes they'd even stop and take pictures through the fence, like vultures circling a dying animal. If this HOA sounds unbelievable already, make sure to hit subscribe. You don't want to miss how this ends. The pressure mounted as the court date approached. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd be the last Henderson to own this land. My grandfather had worked himself to an early death keeping this place during the Depression. My dad had sacrificed his dreams to take care of it when I was sick as a kid. And now, some bureaucrats with a rule book might take it all away. Sarah worked tirelessly, digging through records, interviewing neighbors, researching precedents. The night before the hearing, she called me, her voice buzzing with excitement. "Dad, I found something," she said. "Something big." "What is it?" "Not over the phone. I'll be there in an hour. We need to prepare." She arrived with a faded document protected in a plastic sleeve. It was the original deed to the ranch, dated 1952. "What am I looking at, Sarah?" I asked. "Look at the back," she said, pointing to a paragraph I'd never really paid attention to. "The preservation clause." I read it aloud. "The herein described property shall be maintained in perpetuity as a working ranch and agricultural heritage site, protected from any and all encumbrances that would interfere with its historical character or agricultural use." "So?" I said. "So," Sarah grinned, "when the county approved the development and created the HOA, they included a provision that exempted properties with certain historical designations. And this preservation clause, it was never properly recorded in the county's database, which means the HOA never knew about it when they tried to bring your property under their authority." I stared at her. "You're saying—" "I'm saying they never had jurisdiction over your property in the first place," she said. "Every fine they levied, every regulation they tried to enforce, every threat they made, it was all illegal. They've been bullying you based on authority they never had." The next morning in court, the HOA had brought their high-priced lawyer and half their board, including Brenda Peterson, who kept shooting me smug looks. They presented their case first, showing pictures of my non-compliant property and listing all the fines I'd refused to pay. When it was Sarah's turn, she didn't argue about the fines or the regulations. She walked straight to the judge and handed him the original deed. "Your Honor," she said, her voice clear and confident, "before we discuss the merits of the HOA's claims, we need to address a more fundamental issue, whether they have any authority over my client's property at all." She explained the preservation clause and how it had been overlooked when the HOA was established. The HOA lawyer objected, blustering about procedural technicalities. But the judge was interested. "This is a significant oversight," he said, examining the document. "If this clause was properly executed but not recorded, it would indeed exempt this property from HOA jurisdiction." The hearing continued for another hour as Sarah presented evidence that the HOA had been notified of similar issues with other historical properties but had ignored them. Then she dropped the bombshell. "Your Honor," she said, "not only has the HOA been attempting to enforce regulations they have no authority to enforce, but they've been doing so in bad faith. We have evidence that they plan to foreclose on Mr. Henderson's property and sell it to developers, who would then build luxury homes on the land." She handed the judge a series of emails between Brenda Peterson and a development company, discussing the prime real estate that would be available once they removed the current obstacle. The judge's face grew stern. He looked at Brenda Peterson, who had gone pale. "This is a serious matter," he said. "Attempting to use an HOA's regulatory authority to seize private property for personal gain constitutes fraud. Not to mention the emotional distress caused to Mr. Henderson, he ruled in our favor, not only dismissing all fines and claims against my property, but ordering the HOA to pay $50,000 in damages and legal fees. He also referred the matter to the district attorney for potential criminal charges against the HOA board members." Brenda Peterson stood up, her face red. "This is ridiculous. That property is an eyesore in our community. It's holding back progress." The judge banged his gavel. "Sit down, Miss Peterson, or you'll be held in contempt. This court has spoken." The look on her face was priceless, like a kid who'd been told Christmas was cancelled. On the way out of the courtroom, Sarah stopped me. "There's one more thing, Dad. The DA is interested in pursuing this. They think there might be other properties they've targeted the same way." 2 months later, Brenda Peterson and 2 other board members were indicted on fraud charges. The HOA was forced to restructure under new leadership and more transparent governance. As for me, I still have my ranch. The fence is still the same. The barn still stands. And that windmill? It's still turning in the Texas breeze, just like it has for 50 years. Sometimes I'll be out mending a fence or checking on the cattle, and I'll see one of those fancy cars from the development slow down as it passes. They're not taking pictures anymore. They're just looking, wondering maybe how this old ranch survived when so much around it has changed. I'll tell you the same thing I told my granddaughter when she asked me why I fought so hard to keep this place. Some things aren't about progress or property values or community standards. They're about who you are, where you come from, what you're willing to stand up for. The HOA thought they could push around an old rancher. They thought they could use their rules and regulations to take what wasn't theirs. They thought wrong. What's the most outrageous thing your HOA has tried to pull? Share your stories in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss my next tale of standing up to the bureaucrats. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the old ways are the best ways.